I'm going to try this a second time. This is tricky. I want to start off by saying, yes, I have a poppy, because it was mentioned in the comment section this morning. Yeah, no, I have one. It's on my jacket, so anytime I go outside the house, I've got it on. It's been there for the last couple of days. So yes, I have one. And most people in Canada wear them. There are some that don't. Now, there's no one group that's more likely not to wear it than anybody else. And I think what Don Cherry started as a conversation about whether or not there are enough people that are buying poppies, which is absolutely a problem, where people aren't necessarily buying them anymore. Yeah, because that money goes to a good place. That money spent on those poppies goes to a good place. And yes, we are in an era now where it's not regarded as being as important as it was before. I think where everything gets thrown off is that he said, well, immigrants, you people. Everybody loses their mind. And that's too bad. It's too bad because the conversation about whether or not enough people are wearing poppies on Remembrance Day is absolutely legitimate. It is a legitimate conversation to have. But as soon as you say immigrants and you politicize it, then it becomes a left versus right issue. And then it all falls out. And this is what pisses me off. This is what absolutely makes me go irate. Is that we can have a legitimate conversation and it gets derailed and thrown to the side because we have to make it all us versus them. Don Cherry loses his job today. Now, there's some reports saying he stepped down, but it sounds like he was fired. And for Rogers, it likely was just not worth the hassle for them. He generated a lot of complaints last week after seemingly, and according to some, they said that he diminished the injury and made fun of the injury to Scott Sabourin. I've watched that clip a bunch of times. No, he didn't. He really didn't. He thought the word extremities was funny. That's it. There was no, and the idea that he doesn't take a head injury as serious as a lot of us do, yeah, that's he's 85 years of age, and in his day of playing hockey and coaching hockey, yeah, you just play it. You just play through it. I think he's a big believer that there are certain injuries guys should play through that they don't. I believe that. He has certainly been anti-Europeans in the NHL. But I get it too. And again, this is where it gets tricky because everybody gets enraged. And I've seen all these posts all over Twitter and I haven't responded to any of it. None of it. Because seriously, I see all these comments. I'm thinking, wait, Don's been saying crap like this for years. Are people just finding out? People just finding out about the stuff like, I remember when the Russians came over and he lost his mind because they were taking Canadian jobs, which he was right, and yet you can be right and wrong at the same time. That's the thing, and that's where we lose everything in current political discussions, where all we do is yell and scream at everybody. And I don't discuss my politics on the channel. I'm never going to. I also don't discuss them on the Entertainment Guy. That's dead. Never discuss them again. I am a firm believer that being fair to everybody is important, and that's about as far as I'll go with it. And you know, I know that I pulled down a video on Saturday on the power rankings because it just wasn't worth the hassle. 20 minutes after posting, I'm like, you know what, this is such a pain in the ass. It's gonna be so much better if I just take that down, just redo it. Just redo it, take it down. It's easier for me. I'm not going to have to babysit this video for the next 2 weeks and watch as all these negative comments and all these downvotes build up. You know what? Just forget it. Just forget it. And so that's what it is. And yet there was all this, oh, Shannon's cowing down. He gave in. He gave in. No, I decided it wasn't worth a hassle for me. It has nothing to do with anybody else or anything else. And today's Sportsnet, it kind of feels like they've done that with Don. And I think that's a disservice to somebody who has been on TV for 40 years. He has been very, very vocal in his support of animals, of Canadian junior hockey, of the veterans. He is a very, very big supporter of military veterans. And yes, of course, there are things that he says that we can all agree are cringy and wrong, or no, we can't all agree, and that's the problem. Uh, it is a tough time. It is. It is a tough time where you can go out there and you can report something and people go, well, this is biased. Even if what you're reporting on is factual, that they'll go, this is just biased. And in this era of the internet, I mean, I look back at the 80s and I'm like, man, I'm so glad the internet wasn't a thing back then. Holy crap, could things have been so much worse if the internet was a thing back then? There were so many much more offensive things being said by people back in the 80s. So many. You watch almost any 80s movie and you can start counting off, well, you couldn't say that now. Oh, they definitely couldn't do that now. They couldn't say that now. And we can all have that debate about whether or not it's okay. It's sort of like when somebody says, well, I have the right to say whatever I want. You do. But you can't regulate how somebody will respond. So in this case, Don says something. He has the right to say it. He can't regulate how people are going to respond to it. I will say this. If they have dismissed him on Remembrance Day, if that's what we're looking at, that is the ultimate slap in the face to Don Cherry. Whether you like him or you hate him, it is the ultimate slap in the face that on a day that he will be at a cenotaph, he will be remembering veterans and wanting to talk about that. To fire him on that day is the ultimate slap in the face. Christmas would be less of a slap in the face just to fire him on than Remembrance Day. This has always been a very big day for him. And he has always talked about it on Coach's Corner. And it's all being shoved aside now because he said you people. And I get it. I do. Just like I get why people get offended by things he say and, oh, he shouldn't be on television. Don't watch him. Just don't watch him. I don't sit and watch news broadcasts that upset me, because why should I? If I think I'm watching a news broadcast that's completely biased and the stuff they're reporting isn't true, why am I going to sit and watch it? So when I'm watching something even sports related, if you have somebody on there who's got an opinion piece, and I'm going to say, well, this is crap, I just won't watch it. That's the best thing you can do, is just to say, all right, I'm just not going to. And that was something I even discussed this with Yvonne yesterday. I said, if people weren't watching Coach's Corner, and Rogers could see over the last couple of years, hey, Don's segment really doesn't get viewers, odds are they don't renew his contract over the summer. But everybody tunes in. And there are people, I believe, who are tuning into Coach's Corner waiting for him to say something wrong so they could attack him and they could just jump on him. Because I've seen over the last year especially where they will just jump on him for a comment, whether it's the bunch of jerks thing in Carolina or whatever. And I think, well, I understand what he's saying from his perspective. Do I agree with it? Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. But they'll take like little sound bites, little things he says, and they go, that's it. We're mad at him for this week. All right, good job, everybody. Don Cherry's never hidden who he is. And I feel bad that, on a day that's really important to him, he's losing his job. And again, the rumors he's been fired or stepped down. And John Shannon was the one that tweeted out, Don Cherry is no longer with Rogers / Hockey Night in Canada, which is telling because John Shannon, of course, left Rogers himself. And here's a good response to John Shannon's tweet. I've always enjoyed Don from an entertainment perspective. More people need to be wearing poppies. I agree with him there. But this applies to all Canadians, not one faction of the population. He should have chosen better words. A response to that is, I honestly think he meant it that way. These days, everyone just takes words the way they want to hear them and not actually ask the source what they meant, and chaos ensues. And somebody says, and cancel culture continues. And cancel culture is a problem. It is. Like, I just unsubscribed from channels that I feel have lost their way. I am far more likely to just not watch a TV show that I don't like. I'm not going to be out there screaming and yelling because something offends me. Because something offends you doesn't make it wrong. Because something offends me, it doesn't make it wrong. And in this case, I do think Don chose poor words, and he's losing his job over choosing poor words. And for all the people who are dancing and celebrating and saying, well, that's good, he should be gone anyways, that means that others can be next. And this is where it gets dangerous. This is why I wasn't talking about it. This is why I was not touching this with a 10-foot pole. But now he's out of work. Not for long. He will be able to find work. He's 85 years of age. If he wants to retire, he absolutely can. He has not been doing this for money for years. He's fine. He can just retire and not worry about it. He does it because he loves hockey. He loves the game. And, he is one of the few guys who was willing to admit bias. Just say, yeah, I'm cheering for the Leafs tonight. Oh, I'm cheering for the Bruins tonight. Almost wore their tie, but I didn't. I thought about it. And now he's out of a job. And the only thing I would say is I wonder, who's next? Now, for Sportsnet, for Rogers, look at this from another perspective. If you want to get into the whole Rogers Sportsnet thing, Rogers and Sportsnet have been cutting name after name after name. Bob McCowan, gone. John Shannon, gone. Nick Kyprios, gone. Right? McLean's gone. Well, Don Cherry, likely one of the highest paid guys, well, now they got a reason to get rid of him too. They have been cutting talent right, left, and center. So on some level, part of me is saying, oh, this kind of gave Rogers an out to get out from under his contract and save that money too. Because they were trying to save as much money as possible because they're taking a bath on the NHL contract that they have. So I think there's more to it. I feel bad for Don again. It's the worst day. This not today. If it was tomorrow, okay. Did it have to be today? Did it have to be today? And my answer to that would be no. So it's crappy that we're in this spot. It sucks that we're in this spot, and that if I need to make a video on it because this is a guy who's been a Canadian icon for decades, and the idea that he's out of a job, a lot of people will like that, some won't. I can't even say a lot will and some won't because I don't know the split on who favors or doesn't favor Don Cherry. I think the people who dislike the things he says, I think they're a lot louder than the people who support him. I don't think that necessarily correlates with there being more. I know. I've learned over the years, people are far more likely to complain than to compliment. So if they get your product and they enjoy your product, they are far less likely to leave a comment. And definitely, I've seen that with the channel. It's far more likely people are going to complain than to compliment publicly. And that's how we're built. I enjoy a lot of channels on YouTube. When was the last time I left a comment on a channel I liked? I don't know. It's probably been a while. And usually it's just a comment about something that I feel either I can add to the conversation or, if it's a video where they're going through a tough time, a message of support. But yeah, people are far more likely to complain. So for those who wanted them gone, they get their wish, and we'll see where things go from here. I'm sure Ron McLean feels terrible. He's been close friends with Don for ages, and this is going to hit him pretty hard too. And so now that he's out, what are people going to complain about next? Because that's what happens. That's the way this seems to work now, is that everybody will just complain about something else. So we'll see. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. The only thing I request, and I know this is a big ask on YouTube, is that we find a way to have a conversation. We just don't do it anymore. Everybody just stands as far away from each other as possible because you can't see the other side. You can't. I'm old enough to remember back in the 80s when I would watch a political debate and I'd kind of agree with both sides. I'd go, yeah, I can understand what they're saying about taxes, but I understand what they're saying about healthcare, and I can understand, I think there's a compromise to be had there if. Those days are gone. And so I'm only asking where on this topic, maybe we find something to discuss, and some way to discuss this where it's not just going to be a bunch of yelling and screaming back and forth. That would be nice. That would be really nice. Hopefully that happens. So I have my fingers crossed. I don't know that I necessarily have my hopes up, to be completely blunt, because of my experiences in general with the internet over the last 20 years. But maybe. Maybe a good discussion comes out of this. I'm sure he can find another job. Won't be a problem. There will be somebody who's willing to hire him in Canada. There may even be an American company that gives him a call and says, hey, we want to increase our NHL coverage. How would you like to come work for us? Because people will follow Don. But let me know your thoughts. I'm really hoping for some decent, respectable conversations back and forth. Again, I think in this case it was just a poor choice of words. And I think the underlying fact that there aren't enough people in this country that wear poppies is true. And now a man's lost his job. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.